Once Evan was done with his experiments with the primordial rune of absorption, Anastasia left the closed world of the Dryads and headed towards Star City. With her incredible speed, she arrived in Star City in less than half an hour. Upon arrival, she made her way to the Blood Moon auction house to meet Leopold. Using the slave mark she had left on him, she informed him of her arrival. By the time she reached the auction house, the vampire was already waiting for her outside. Using her shadow power, Anastasia rendered herself invisible to everyone except Leopold, ensuring she wouldn't attract unwanted attention. When Leopold saw her, he immediately led her inside the auction house. Once they were inside, Anastasia wasted no time and instructed him to keep an eye out for any of the 6 items Evan needed. Leopold was stunned when he heard the names of the items Anastasia wanted and couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. As a rank 5 core evolver, he was fully aware of the value of the items she described. Even with his extensive business connections, he had no confidence in finding any of them. Though he wanted to tell Anastasia that it was almost impossible to get any of those items, he refrained out of fear of her wrath. Instead, he nodded like a timid chick and remained silent. Anastasia, naturally perceptive, noticed his expression and could easily guess what he was thinking. However, she didn't care. She was well aware of the rarity of the items and knew the chances of him finding them were extremely low. Still, she wanted him to remain vigilant just in case. The main reason she had come, however, wasn't the items, but to gather other critical information. What is the situation in the Elvenshine Empire? Is anything unusual happening there? She asked, her tone calm but serious. She inquired about the Elvenshine Empire because she hadn't forgotten what Evan had told her about Elysia. Due to her connection with the Tree of Life and the summoning of its phantom on Earth, there was a high probability that Illustraea could track her location using the real Tree of Life. Even if the exact location remained hidden, it wouldn't be difficult for Illustraea to pinpoint the approximate area, namely, the Dark Forest. Since Illustraea could appear in the Dark Forest at any time, Anastasia needed to be prepared. Leopold was surprised by her question but didn't dare ask why she was interested in the Elvenshine Empire. Instead, he nodded respectfully. There have been some changes in the Elvenshine Empire recently, he began. According to the branch manager of the Blood Moon auction house in the Elvenshine Empire's capital, the high officials of the elves are searching for someone. Rumor has it that this search order came directly from Empress Illustraea. Although they are acting discreetly, such large-scale movements couldn't be completely hidden from Utopia's major factions. Anastasia wasn't surprised by this revelation. She had already anticipated that brute of a woman would begin searching for Elysia. That woman is nothing but a walking bag of troubles, Anastasia muttered under her breath before asking another question. Do you know who they are looking for? Leopold shook his head. The operation is being conducted by the Elven high officials, and they have kept the details tightly guarded. It's hard to say who their target might be. Anastasia nodded, absorbing the information. After asking a few more questions, she reiterated her instructions to keep an eye out for the 6 items Evan needed and then left Star City. After leaving the Star City, instead of returning directly to the closed world of the Dryads, she traveled to various other places, gathering more information about the movements within the Elvenshine Empire. After approximately a day and a half, she began her journey back to the closed world of the Dryads. She appeared deep in thought, as though pondering something significant. As she approached the closed world, she took a deep breath and finally made up her mind about whatever had been troubling her. Upon entering the closed world, she headed straight for the training room where Evan was. As she neared the room, she sensed powerful energy fluctuations emanating from within, which took her by surprise. He really reached the peak of rank 3 in just a day and a half, she muttered, genuinely shocked. Although she had felt the power of the rune of absorption when Evan used it previously, she couldn't help but marvel at how quickly he had advanced to the peak of rank 3. A few minutes later, the energy fluctuations subsided, and Anastasia entered the training room. Her gaze fell on Evan, who had just completed his breakthrough. Evan was equally surprised to see Anastasia, as she had told him she would be gone for 3 or 4 days. Yet, here she was, back in less than 2. Before he could ask her anything, Anastasia appeared before him like a ghost and pulled him into a tight hug. Evan was startled and instinctively tried to pull away, but even with his newfound strength, he was no match for Anastasia. Like a playful yet domineering rogue, she hugged him tightly, rubbed her face against his, and planted kisses all over him as she walked around him, repeating the act. Horrified, Evan felt utterly violated. Despite his desperate desire to escape, he was powerless to do so and could only endure her antics. After about 5 minutes, Anastasia finally stopped. She sniffed herself, nodded in apparent satisfaction, and turned to look at Evan, who was now lying on the ground, staring at her in horror. She flashed him a sweet smile but said nothing as she left the training room. After leaving, without further delay, Anastasia sought out Ashley. After obtaining a teleportation token from her, she headed to the teleportation building in the closed world. Once inside the teleportation building, she selected a formation that led to the northern territory of Utopia and activated it. The teleportation formation shone with bright silver light and in an instant, Anastasia disappeared from the closed world of the Dryads. Leaving the closed world of the Dryads through the teleportation formation, Anastasia appeared in the northern territory of Utopia. The place where she was teleported was the same one Evan had arrived at when he left for the forbidden land of Utopia. Stepping out of the teleportation formation, Anastasia ascended into the sky, her gaze sweeping over the vast forest below. As she turned in every direction, she was met with the same sight, an endless stretch of greenery extending as far as the horizon. "This place is still as full of endless green as ever," Anastasia murmured to herself, her voice carrying a tone of nostalgia. Shifting her gaze, she looked in the direction opposite Fragile End, the city where Evan had ventured before entering the Forbidden Land. "The weather today is perfect for visiting an old friend," she muttered softly, a faint smile playing on her lips. Without further hesitation, she surged forward like a streak of black light, her speed so immense that her surroundings became a blur. The landscape beneath her shifted rapidly, and in less than half an hour, she reached the forest's edge. There, a large city came into view. Elves bustled to and fro, entering and leaving the city gates, though individuals from other races could be seen among them. Still, elves were undoubtedly the majority. Anastasia cast a fleeting glance at the city but paid no further attention, continuing on her way without slowing down. As she flew onward, she encountered a handful of flying monsters that dared to attack her. However, without exception, they were reduced to clouds of blood mist the moment they ventured too close to her. One city after another passed beneath her, their bustling streets and watchful guards unable to affect her journey. Several hours later, she came across a city unlike the others she had passed earlier. This one stood out for its prosperity, far exceeding the rest. The streets were packed with people, and the flow of traffic was ceaseless. The city radiated vitality, its liveliness palpable even from a distance. Her gaze shifted to the center of the city, where a massive, lush green tree towered in the heart of the central district. This tree, reaching thousands of meters into the sky, radiated an unparalleled aura of life. The entire city was enveloped in a protective green mist emanating from the tree. As the residents of the city breathed, the green mist flowed into their bodies, rejuvenating them and restoring their vitality. Unlike the other cities she had encountered on her journey, Anastasia did not immediately fly into this one. Instead, she descended gracefully to the ground, altering her appearance before approaching the city gates. As she neared the entrance, she activated her powers, cloaking herself in a faint black aura. This protective layer shimmered subtly, blending seamlessly with her surroundings. When she crossed the threshold into the city, the green mist rippled briefly as if in response to her presence. However, the disturbance was minor, and no one appeared to notice. Anastasia observed the phenomenon for a moment, her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile, before proceeding forward. Blending in with the crowd, she walked along the bustling streets. Then, with a subtle shift in her energy, she vanished into thin air, unnoticed by anyone around her. Moments later, she reappeared in front of the grand castle located at the heart of the city. Her gaze moved to the towering tree that loomed over the castle grounds, its branches laden with vibrant leaves. Without hesitation, she activated her soul resonance skill. Instantly, her power surged to new heights, and the faint black aura cloaking her became even more obscure, making her completely undetectable. Confident in her concealment, Anastasia stepped forward and entered the castle. The two rank 4 guards stationed at the entrance stood motionless, completely unaware of her presence as she passed by them. As she navigated the castle's interior, she encountered numerous guards and high-ranking officials. Yet, none of them noticed her as she moved steadily toward the massive tree. The deeper she ventured into the castle, the fewer guards there were. However, her enhanced senses allowed her to detect a number of hidden guards strategically stationed throughout the area. These hidden guards were clearly of higher rank than the others she had encountered earlier. Among them were many rank 4 core evolvers, and she could faintly sense the presence of a rank 5 individual. Despite their strength, Anastasia felt no concern. She strolled past them effortlessly, even pausing occasionally to check if they carried anything valuable. To her disappointment, her search turned up nothing of interest. For a moment, she contemplated taking their storage rings. However, she quickly dismissed the idea, reminding herself that she was here to visit an old friend. Robbing the subordinates of that friend would hardly be a respectful gesture. It wouldn't reflect well to rob the people under my friend, she thought to herself as she finally reached the entrance to the courtyard where the massive tree resided. 2 elves, both rank 5, stood guard at the courtyard's entrance. They exuded a sense of authority and vigilance, though their rigid postures made it seem as though they were waiting for someone to pay back a debt. Anastasia ignored them completely and stepped into the courtyard. The 2 guards remained oblivious, their expressions unchanged as though they were statues awaiting imaginary debtors. As soon as Anastasia entered the courtyard, a wave of rich, life-giving energy enveloped her. The sensation was so profound that even though she was uninjured and at her peak vitality, she felt her body relax and rejuvenate. Taking a deep breath, she allowed herself to enjoy the sensation for a brief moment before focusing her attention on the center of the courtyard. There, beneath the massive tree of life, sat an elven woman. She was unmistakably Illustraea. At this moment, the woman was leaning lazily against the tree, her hands tucked behind her head. Her peaceful expression and elegant posture gave her the appearance of a serene, sleeping beauty. Anastasia stared at the scene before her with a mix of amusement and disbelief. In her mind, she knew Illustraea to be a brash, muscle-headed woman, yet here she was, looking serene and picturesque. A thief has entered your house, and you are just napping. Anastasia thought to herself, shaking her head in exasperation. Her gaze shifted upward to the 5 golden fruits hanging from the tree of life. The fruits glowed faintly, radiating immense power and vitality, drawing Anastasia's attention. Her eyes flickered with intrigue before a mischievous smile spread across her lips. I promised myself not to rob my friend's subordinates, she mused silently. But no one ever said I couldn't rob my friend. Like a skilled thief, Anastasia crept toward the tree of life, stopping a few meters away from the sleeping Illustraea. Without alerting her, she agilely climbed the tree, her movements as fluid as a shadow. In seconds, she climbed a few hundred meters and stopped in front of a thick branch. The branch was vibrant with lush green leaves radiating a rich vitality. However, Anastasia's focus was entirely on a golden fruit hanging from the branch, shaped like a pear and gleaming with a faint ethereal glow. Anastasia glanced down at Illustraea. Seeing her still peacefully asleep, she refrained from touching the fruit directly. Instead, she extended a finger, releasing a thin strand of black energy. The energy line shot forward, severing the fruit's stem cleanly. The golden fruit detached from the branch and began its descent toward the ground. As the fruit fell, Anastasia descended the tree with remarkable speed, reaching the ground just as the fruit landed. The moment the fruit broke from its branch and started falling, Illustraea woke up from her slumber. She opened her eyes and noticed the descending fruit, her expression momentarily confused as it wasn't time for the fruit to ripen yet, so its sudden fall baffled her. She didn't attempt to catch it, allowing it to land gently on the ground. Intrigued by the anomaly, Illustraea stretched her hand toward the fruit, wanting to pull it closer to inspect the cause of its untimely fall. But to her surprise, the fruit didn't budge. No matter how much telekinetic force she exerted, it remained fixed in place. Illustria's brows furrowed in puzzlement. Using her spiritual senses, she probed the area and discovered a thin black line of energy, so fine it was more than 1,000 times thinner than a hair, binding the fruit to the ground. Curious because of the strange phenomenon, she stood up and approached the fruit. She looked at the fruit carefully and bent down to pick it up. However, as she bent down to examine it more closely, a chilling sense of danger coursed through her. Every hair on her body stood on end, and her instincts screamed at her to react. But unfortunately, before she could turn around, a malicious laugh echoed behind her, freezing her in place. Her eyes widened in shock. Anastasia, who had been waiting for the perfect moment, materialized behind her with a wicked grin. Her gaze mischievously locked onto Illustria's round, prominent buttocks. Like a professional soccer player aiming for a goal, she delivered a powerful kick. Just as her foot was about to make contact, a green shield of energy materialized around Illustria's body. However, the shield, hastily summoned, shattered like fragile glass upon impact, and the next moment. "You sneaky bit," Illustria began to shout, her voice a mix of fury and shock. However, before she could finish her sentence, the force of Anastasia's kick sent her hurtling into the sky like a missile and she disappeared into the horizon, a streak of light resembling a shooting star. Watching her cheap friend fly off into the distance, Anastasia doubled over with laughter, her mirth echoing like that of a triumphant street thug. Wiping a tear from the corner of her eye, she collected the golden fruit and stored it in her ring. Glancing up at the tree of life, her eyes lingered on the remaining 4 golden fruits. She hesitated, her fingers twitching slightly, before shaking her head. "Let's not be too greedy. If I take them all, that muscle-headed brute will flip all of Utopia upside down," she muttered to herself, her voice low but amused. Lowering herself to the ground, Anastasia leaned against the tree in the exact position Illustria had been sitting moments earlier, her expression calm and composed. Illustria's earlier outburst had alerted the 2 rank 5 guards stationed outside the courtyard. They rushed inside, their expressions grim. However, upon seeing Anastasia reclining casually against the tree of life, their hearts sank. Glancing around the courtyard, they failed to spot Illustria anywhere, and a chill ran down their spines as fear took root in their hearts. The guards, both rank 5 core revolvers, were well aware of Illustria's strength. Despite their own considerable power, they knew they couldn't withstand even a single blow from her. And the sudden disappearance of someone as formidable as her, coupled with the presence of an unknown woman sitting under the tree of life, spelled trouble. Without hesitation, they retrieved their communication crystals and sent out urgent distress signals. Within moments, powerful auras surged across the castle, converging on the courtyard. Anastasia, entirely unbothered by the escalating chaos, continued to gaze at the sky with a contemplative expression. "It's already been 5 seconds. She should be back any moment now," she muttered, counting silently in her head. Before Illustria could return, several rank 5 and 2 rank 6 core revolvers arrived in the courtyard. Among them was an elderly elf who appeared to be around 80 or 90 years old, releasing the aura of a peak rank 6 core revolver. Beside him stood a striking woman with long golden hair, her aura radiating the power of a mid-level rank 6 core revolver. She was Queen Vivian, the current ruler of the Elf Empire. As Illustria never bothered with administrative matters, Vivian had taken on the responsibility of managing the kingdom. Despite being surrounded by such powerful individuals, Anastasia remained unfazed. Her gaze stayed fixed on the sky, her demeanor indifferent. Vivian scrutinized Anastasia, a vague sense of familiarity tugging at her memory, though she couldn't quite place where she had seen her before. Meanwhile, the elderly elf beside her stared at Anastasia with wide eyes, his body trembling slightly as if in recognition. "Who are you?" Vivian asked in a serious tone. Anastasia didn't respond, her attention still elsewhere. Just as Vivian prepared to repeat her question, Anastasia's lips curled into a small smile. "She's coming," she said softly, her tone tinged with amusement. The next instant, bang! A loud boom echoed as a golden-haired woman landed in the courtyard with enough force to crack the ground beneath her feet. Her fiery gaze locked onto Anastasia like a predator targeting its prey. "You sneaky bitch. Don't you feel ashamed of using such a low-level trick to at?" Illustraya's indignant tirade was cut short as Anastasia retrieved a recording crystal and activated it. The crystal projected the earlier scene, Illustraya attempting to pull the golden fruit toward her, only for it to stubbornly stick to the ground. Illustraya's eyes widened in shock as she realized what was coming next. Her gaze darted toward Vivian and the others, who were also watching the recording with curious looks on their faces. Illustraya's face turned crimson with embarrassment and fury when she saw this, and she glared at Anastasia. Her expression conveyed utter disbelief. Anastasia, thoroughly enjoying her cheap friend's reaction, grinned playfully. "Musclehead," she teased, her tone dripping with mockery, "how about we broadcast this beautiful scene to the entire Utopia? I am sure everyone would love to see it." Illustraya was visibly flustered when she heard Anastasia's words about wanting to broadcast the entire scene across Utopia, and her gaze turned venomous, glaring at Anastasia like a snake preparing to strike. At this moment, Illustraya genuinely wished she could borrow some of Akasha's abilities to poison the shameless shadow dragon to death. Seeing that the scene was still playing and was about to reach the part where Anastasia's foot collided with her rear, Illustraya took a deep breath and, with a wave of her hand, addressed Vivian and the others. "All of you, leave," she commanded, her tone calm but imbued with a powerful force that no one could resist. A surge of energy enveloped the group, ejecting them from the courtyard. Anastasia clicked her tongue in disappointment at the abrupt dismissal. She deactivated the recording crystal, muttering under her breath about the wasted opportunity to share her masterpiece with an audience. Illustraya noticed the look of dissatisfaction on Anastasia's face, which only served to fuel her anger. "Don't you feel any shame using such a low-level trick to attack me?" Illustraya snapped, her voice sharp with irritation. Anastasia nonchalantly put the recording crystal away and shrugged. "Shame? Why would I feel ashamed? I am weak in direct confrontation and excel in sneak attacks. Naturally, I use my strengths when dealing with someone as powerful as you." Illustraya sneered when she heard her words, her expression a mixture of disbelief and disdain. "Good at sneak attacks," she repeated mockingly. "A dragon claiming it doesn't have the strength to fight head-on. What a pathetic joke." Anastasia opened her mouth to reply, but before she could, a flash of golden light filled her vision, and Illustraya's fist hurtled toward her face. Boom! The booming sound echoed through the courtyard as Illustraya's fist made contact with Anastasia, or so it seemed. Instead of striking flesh, her punch passed cleanly through Anastasia's form, which dissolved into a puff of black smoke. Unfortunately, Anastasia had been leaning against the Tree of Life, and Illustraya's punch hit the ancient tree instead. The resulting shockwave caused the tree to shake violently, and a deafening explosion reverberated across the capital. The entire Elf Empire's capital trembled as if struck by hundreds of nuclear blasts. Vivian, standing outside the courtyard, grimaced and cursed under her breath. She quickly used her powers to stabilize the trembling city. "I hope she doesn't lose control and destroy the entire capital," Vivian said, immediately issuing orders to the guards to secure the area and prepare for potential disaster. Back in the courtyard, a shadow slithered across the ground like a snake before condensing into Anastasia's figure, now a few hundred meters away from Illustraya. "Tisk, tisk." Anastasia shook her head in mock disappointment, her tone calm and teasing. "You are still the same muscle-headed brute, thinking every problem can be solved with your fists." Illustraya didn't dignify the comment with a response. Instead, she launched another attack. Yet no matter how many times she tried, her efforts ended in failure as Anastasia's shadowy form evaded her every move. After half an hour of relentless attempts, when the entire capital was already in complete chaos, Illustraya finally stopped, glaring at Anastasia with mounting frustration. "Coward," she shouted, "stop running around and fight me if you have even an ounce of courage." Anastasia didn't care about Illustraya's mocking words and shook her head with a bemused smile. "Now that you know you can't catch me, how about we have a little chat?" she suggested. Illustraya's expression darkened, and she turned her back on Anastasia with an air of dismissal. "If you want to talk, go talk to Titian." She is the one managing the Empire now, she said, settling back under the tree of life as if Anastasia no longer existed. Anastasia was momentarily speechless, resisting the urge to correct Illustraea by pointing out that the current queen's name was Vivian, not Titian. However, she decided it wasn't worth the effort to argue. The business I am referring to can only be handled by you, Anastasia insisted, stepping closer and sitting beside Illustraea. Illustraea glanced at Anastasia with irritation, her fists itching to strike. Yet she knew better than to waste her energy on someone she couldn't catch, so she ignored her. You have really grown up over the past few thousand years, Anastasia remarked with sincerity when Illustraea didn't attack her again. Your IQ has gone from 0 to 0.5. Her tone was laced with amusement, and her expression resembled that of a proud mother watching her dim-witted child finally grasp something simple. Black lines appeared on Illustraea's forehead, and a suffocating aura engulfed the entire elf capital, sending waves of fear rippling through everyone present. Sensing the rising anger, Anastasia wisely decided to stop teasing and return to the matter at hand. There are 2 things I need you to do for me, she said. Illustraea took a deep breath, reining in her emotions, and sneered. Do you really think I would do anything for you after what you just pulled? Anastasia waved a hand dismissively. Why so serious? It was just a warm greeting, a lovely way to reconnect with my dear friend after so long. Illustraea's eye twitched, her patience wearing dangerously thin. She was about to call me her cheap friend, wasn't she? Illustraea thought to herself, seething inwardly. Anyway, Anastasia continued, ignoring Illustraea's growing anger, let's focus on the present. What I am asking you to do is actually beneficial for you. Illustraea scoffed, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Beneficial to me? What could you, an ancient fossil, possibly offer someone at my level? Now it was Anastasia's turn to be speechless. The insult of being called ancient fossil stung, and for a brief moment, she considered giving Illustraea another kick. However, remembering her purpose, she let the remark slide. What if I told you, Anastasia said casually, that what I am offering could help you break through your current level and ascend to an entirely new realm? What if I told you that what I am offering could help you break through your current level and ascend to an entirely new realm? Illustraea frowned at Anastasia's words, her expression tinged with confusion. What do you mean? She asked, her tone uncertain. Anastasia shook her head at Illustraea's puzzled look and tapped her own forehead. Before we proceed further, wake up your main personality, she said. The current you is not suitable for such matters. Illustraea studied Anastasia's serious expression, and after a moment of contemplation, she closed her eyes. Anastasia waited patiently, taking care not to disturb her. Around 5 minutes later, Illustraea opened her eyes once more. But as she opened her eyes, the carefree aura that had surrounded her previously was completely gone. Instead, an overwhelming, dominant presence radiated from her, a fierce battle spirit brimming with fighting intent. The intensity of her aura surged outward, blanketing an area tens of millions of kilometers wide. Those who felt the terrifying battle intent, including rank 6 core evolvers like Vivian, experienced a mind-numbing sensation, and many had vivid hallucinations of standing in the heart of a chaotic battlefield. Whoa, mommy, chill, Anastasia exclaimed as she quickly pressed her hand against Illustraea's forehead, suppressing the battle aura before it could cause further havoc. Her timely intervention prevented the people of the Elvenshine Empire, especially those below rank 5, from being overwhelmed, as under the battle intent, many had already started looking for weapons to fight an imagined enemy. Outside, Vivian, who had been standing nervously, sighed in relief as the oppressive aura subsided. She wiped the cold sweat from her forehead and turned to check on the nearby rank 4 core guards. To her dismay, she found them pointing their weapons at one another in a dazed state. My workload is definitely going to increase again, she muttered, sighing deeply as she considered resigning from her position. Within the courtyard, the oppressive atmosphere dissipated, and Illustraea looked at Anastasia blankly. She slapped Anastasia's hand away from her forehead and stood up, her demeanor completely different from before. What do you want to talk about? She asked in a plain voice, devoid of the carefree tone she had used earlier. Anastasia didn't immediately answer. Instead, she asked curiously, "How long have you been sleeping?" "I don't keep track of time when I sleep," Illustraya replied before giving her a pointed look. "Just get to the point, or I will go back to sleep." Anastasia's mouth twitched at her response, and she spoke in a dry tone. "Even I, as a dragon known for long slumbers, can't compete with you when it comes to sleeping." Illustraya shook her head at Anastasia's words, her voice filled with depression. "When I am asleep, I can keep myself calm. If I stayed awake, I might die of boredom from having nothing to do." "There are plenty of things you could try to relieve your boredom," Anastasia countered. "There is no need to talk as if you are contemplating suicide." "You should know this better than anyone," Illustraya said, shaking her head again. "After living for millions of years, I have already tried everything. I am at my limit. I love fighting, but I have fought against all the top-level core evolvers tens of thousands of times. Facing the same opponents over and over again without any changes." She trailed off, shaking her head once more, her tone growing even more despondent. "First of all, I don't know what you are talking about," Anastasia retorted. "I am just 18 years and a few trillion months old. In a sense, I am not even 19 years old, so I can't possibly understand how a fossil like you feels. Second," she continued, "you should stop slacking off and review my conversation with your secondary personality to see why I am here." Illustraya blinked, startled by Anastasia's words, and gave her a strange look. 18 years and a few trillion months old, but not 19. She muttered to herself, feeling her brain struggle to process the contradictory statement. Deciding not to dwell on it, she focused instead on reviewing her secondary personality's memories. In mere seconds, she sifted through the last few hours' worth of interactions, and when she reached the end, her eyes widened. She paid no attention to the trivial detail of her ass getting kicked by Anastasia. Such things didn't matter to her. What did matter were Anastasia's claims about a method to break through her current bottleneck. "You said you want me to do 2 things for you, right? Just tell me," she urged, her voice filled with eagerness as she looked at Anastasia with eyes brimming with expectation. "Don't you want to at least confirm whether I am telling the truth or not?" Anastasia asked, a strange expression crossing her face as she observed Illustraya's impatient demeanor. "There is no need," Illustraya replied. "Although you are a sinister bitch, I know that as a progenitor and a dragon, you have your own pride and wouldn't lie to me." "Well," Anastasia looked awkward at the declaration, feeling a twinge of guilt. She didn't particularly care about the so-called pride of a progenitor or dragon. As long as her objectives were achieved, she had no qualms about using cheap tricks, just as she had done along with Evan and others to ignite the war between dragons and demons. She shook her head, pushing the thought aside. This time, her intentions were genuine, as she really did plan to help Illustraya to give her a new goal in life. With a sigh, she gazed at the eager elf before her. "You only reviewed your secondary personality's memories from the past few hours. Go back and check the last few years. Then you will understand what I want." Illustraya frowned at her words but refrained from asking further questions. Instead, she delved deeper into her secondary personality's memories. In less than 5 seconds, she scanned through the memories spanning the last few thousand years, and when she reached the memories of the last 2 years, everything became clear. "You want me to give up my control over the Tree of Life?" she asked, narrowing her eyes as she stared at Anastasia. Chapter 1296 Clue about Mithranor Part 3. "You want me to relinquish my control over the Tree of Life?" Illustraya asked with a deep frown on her face, her eyes narrowed. Hearing Illustraya's words, Anastasia nodded, then shook her head. "To be precise, I want you to stop searching for Elysia all over Utopia and let her summon the phantom of the Tree of Life wherever she needs to." Illustraya's furrowed brows relaxed slightly at Anastasia's response. "Elysia, you are talking about the shadow undead created from my essence clone, right?" she asked, her tone contemplative as she recalled memories from her secondary personality, memories from when Evan destroyed her essence clone in the Aurora world inside the dungeon. When her essence clone had been destroyed and subjected to shadow resurrection, only a small part of its energy returned to her. In that fragment of memory, she saw her essence clone defeated by Evan and being turned into another shadow undead. Yes, Anastasia confirmed, with a nod. But you don't need to worry. You know as well as I do that it's impossible for anyone other than you to fully control the Tree of Life. You are uniquely compatible with it. Even if you allow Elysia to summon the phantom of the Tree of Life, it won't affect you. Illustraea remained silent at Anastasia's words and thought deeply. After nearly a full minute of contemplation, she finally spoke. There are many questions I need to ask you, such as where you have been for the past few thousand years and what is going on with that guy, but before any of that. She paused, her eyes narrowing. Tell me, how is he able to turn my essence clone into a shadow undead? Essence clones are merely masses of energy without a source or soul. How is it possible for him to transform it into a shadow undead? This question had been bothering her deeply. While she hadn't noticed anything wrong with herself, the fact that a shadow undead made from her essence clone retained some of her memories, and even the ability to partially control the Tree of Life, was unsettling. It was as though Elysia was becoming a new version of her, trying to replace her in this world. Although she wasn't afraid of such possibilities, she still wanted to understand what was going on. Anastasia was fully aware of why Illustraea asked this question, but she couldn't provide an answer. After Evan told her about Mithranor and Lesantra, both he and Anastasia had concluded that the reason Shadow Resurrection could bypass most restrictions, particularly when used on elves and demons, was tied to those two figures. While not entirely certain, Evan and Anastasia were at least 99% sure that Evan's connection to Mithranor, who was the progenitor of the elves, was the key to turning Illustraea's essence clone into a shadow undead. However, Anastasia couldn't reveal anything about Mithranor to Illustraea, especially considering that Illustraea herself is an elf. Even though Illustraea wasn't directly connected to him, Anastasia didn't want to risk anyone else learning about him, as it could alert that guy and make it more difficult for her and Evan to find him. I can't tell you right now, Anastasia said, shaking her head. But I can assure you that Elysia won't harm you in any way. Illustraea stared at her intently for a few seconds before nodding. All right, I won't stop her from using the phantom of the Tree of Life. But if I find that she is trying to harm it, I will cut off her connection immediately. No problem, Anastasia agreed with a nod. And don't forget, you need to stop searching for her as well. Yes, we will talk about it later, Illustraea said with a dismissive wave of her hand, and without giving Anastasia a chance to continue, she asked, what is the second thing you want me to do? Anastasia looked at Illustraea with a deadpan expression, suspecting that the elf was definitely up to something. However, since Illustraea had already agreed to let Elysia use the Tree of Life, she decided to let it slide. I want you to help me kill someone, Anastasia said plainly. Huh, Illustraea was stunned when she heard her words. Kill someone? Is there anyone you can't deal with using your own strength? As she spoke, a thought occurred to her, and her eyes narrowed. Do you want to kill Akasha? As an ancient being herself, Illustraea was well aware of the grudge between Anastasia and Akasha. It made sense for Anastasia to want Akasha dead. After all, considering Anastasia's immense power, killing even a normal peak rank 6 core evolver wouldn't be difficult. Only individuals like herself, Akasha, Eldracar, and a few others would pose a significant challenge. But to Illustraea's surprise, Anastasia shook her head and uttered something that left her shocked. Not Akasha, I want to kill Winterclaw. Winterclaw, Illustraea frowned, her expression turning curious. You do not seem to have any grudge against him. Why do you want to kill him? Anastasia was delighted by Illustraea's reaction. If she had told anyone else about her plan to kill a monarch, they would have shouted in disbelief, thinking she had lost her mind. But this battle maniac wasn't fazed in the slightest. Instead of questioning her sanity, Illustraea was simply asking about her motive. There is no hatred between us, Anastasia explained. But he has something we need. The only way to get it is to kill him. Illustraea's sharp ears picked up the pronoun immediately, and she raised an eyebrow. You mean that bastard wants to kill Winterclaw? Anastasia smiled at Illustraea's perceptiveness and raised her hand to touch Illustraea's pointy ears. Why are you still hung up on past events? She teased. Haven't they already grown back? Just let it go. Illustraya slapped Anastasia's hand away, her expression turning dark. She was about to respond when she suddenly paused, sniffing Anastasia's outstretched hand like a dog. Why do you have another smell on you? Chapter 1297 Clue about Mithranor Part 4. Why do you have the smell of another person on you? Illustraya suddenly asked, leaning forward and sniffing Anastasia's hand like a dog. Upon hearing Illustraya's words, Anastasia's lips curled upwards in a barely perceptible hidden smile and she quickly pulled her hand back, almost as though she didn't want the elf woman to find anything. Are you a dog or something? Stay away from me, she snapped in a hasty voice, taking a step back. Illustraya, however, paid no attention to Anastasia's reaction. She leaned in closer and began sniffing her again. A frown appeared on her face as she detected that Anastasia's entire body carried the scent of another person. Suddenly, a thought struck her, and her eyes widened in astonishment. Don't tell me you and he, she began, her voice filled with disbelief as if she herself couldn't fathom the possibility. Alas, Anastasia did not even try to put an act when she saw Illustraya's expression as if she was waiting for her to ask this question and sighed. I didn't want to tell you about it, but it seems I was careless, she admitted, an annoyed look that seemed to be filled with gloating in Illustraya's eyes flashing across her face. That guy has completely changed from who he used to be. He can't let me go for even a second. Before I came here, he was clinging to me as if I were water and he was a fish. No matter where I go or do, he is always there, clinging to me like a needy puppy. Anastasia sighed again and tilted her head back, looking at the sky with a somewhat depressed expression. Actually, the reason I came here was to get away from him for a while and get some fresh air, she continued, lowering her gaze to look at Illustraya, whose mouth was already open in an O shape. Before I came here, I used my power to cleanse myself and erase his scent, but alas, he has been clinging to me for months now, and even with my powers, I couldn't completely remove it. It's as if he has marked me with his scent. Illustraya clenched her teeth as she listened to Anastasia's words, and for a moment, she couldn't help but feel that this dragon woman was talking about her pet. Taking a deep breath to calm her racing thoughts, she asked in a low voice. Who is this person you are talking about? Although Illustraya had a strong suspicion as to who Anastasia meant, she asked the question anyway because the way Anastasia described this person didn't match the cold, emotionless figure she remembered. Recalling those cold eyes, Illustraya's hand brushed against her pointy ear, and her expression twisted slightly as if recalling an unpleasant memory. Anastasia ignored the strange look on Illustraya's face and replied with a shake of her head. Is there really any need to ask this question? You already know whom I am talking about. Illustraya took a deep breath at Anastasia's response. After a moment of silence, she asked in a hesitant voice. Are you sure the guy clinging to you is the right person? She paused, clearly uncomfortable, and hesitated before mustering the courage to continue. I mean, are you sure you didn't just pick up some random guy to deceive yourself after suffering setback after setback? Anastasia's eye twitched at Illustraya's words, and her face darkened. Are you saying I am mentally ill and just picked someone off the roadside to fool myself? Illustraya didn't reply, but the look she gave Anastasia was filled with genuine concern, as if she was truly worried about her mental health. Black lines appeared on Anastasia's forehead as she resisted the urge to lash out and punch Illustraya. Why isn't this woman reacting according to the script? Shouldn't she be shocked and start asking me everything that happened? Then I could weave a grand tale that would leave this million-year-old single woman seething with jealousy. Anastasia thought with a depressed look on her face and felt her attempt to show off was destroyed by her. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Anastasia decided not to waste her energy on Illustraya anymore. She briefly considered finding someone else to brag to, but realized she didn't have good relationships with any of the other ancient beings. In short, she didn't have any other friends. TCH. Anastasia clicked her tongue in annoyance, losing interest in showing off to Illustraya. I am leaving. Be prepared, we will attack Winterclaw in the next 3 or 4 months. Illustraya was startled by Anastasia's sudden change in demeanor as she stood, ready to leave. Wait, she called out, stopping her. You haven't told me the method to break my current bottleneck. And besides, I never agreed to attack Winterclaw with you. Anastasia's expression remained unchanged as she pointed her finger at Illustria's forehead. Don't resist, she said as a beam of black light emerged from her fingertip and penetrated Illustria's forehead. Illustria felt a flood of information surge into her mind, causing her to frown. Without another word, Anastasia turned around and spoke in a light tone. Don't forget to come when I call you to kill him. Illustria resisted the urge to immediately process the information Anastasia had given her. Instead, she opened her eyes and called out again. Wait, she said, narrowing her gaze. Where are you and that guy living? Anastasia didn't stop walking, replying without looking back. You long-eared guys aren't welcome there, so don't ask. Illustria was stunned by the response and almost retorted that Evan also had long ears. However, a particular memory from her secondary personality that she had just seen a few minutes ago surfaced in her mind, and she shouted to Anastasia, who was already in the sky. If you are planning to kill Winterclaw, then there is something I need to tell you. It is something I found a few days ago while searching for Elysia. Chapter 1298 Clue about Mithranor Part 5. Anastasia left the capital of the Elventian Empire and flew back toward the teleportation formation she had used to arrive in the northern territory of Utopia. A deep frown marred her face as she recalled what Illustria had told her. Could it be that guy? She thought inwardly, her mind racing. According to Illustria, a few days ago, she had received a piece of information from one of her undercover agents working in the Frozen Monarchy, the empire ruled by Winterclaw. The agent reported that an important person had come to see Winterclaw. Even though the agent had only caught a brief glimpse of this individual while delivering food, he had felt a pressure similar to what he experienced in Winterclaw's presence. In fact, the pressure this mysterious person emitted was even greater than Winterclaw's. What was even more surprising was that, based on the outline of the figure, the agent strongly suspected that the person was an elf. When Anastasia heard this information, she immediately thought of Mithranor, as other than him, she couldn't think of any other elf who could have such a powerful presence. At the same time, she recalled what Evan had told her. He used the concept of nothingness to erase Mithranor's essence clone on Earth a few days ago. Considering the timing, there is a high chance that Guy went to see Winterclaw after getting injured from completely losing his essence clone. Anastasia thought to herself and suddenly felt that the task of killing Winterclaw would not be easy. What troubled her even more was Winterclaw's true identity. According to the theories she and Evan had discussed, Winterclaw might have a connection to Primordial Loli, the same connection Valerie had. Now that he also had ties to Mithranor as well, things had become even more complicated. There is even a chance that Mithranor, the progenitor of elves, had personally gone to meet Winterclaw because he, too, was aware of Winterclaw's connection to Primordial Loli. If this were true, then Winterclaw might be helping Mithranor in exchange for benefits, perhaps valuable information regarding Primordial Loli. And considering the fact that Mithranor's essence clone had been on Earth, as well as Winterclaw's own people searching for Valerie on Earth, their connection seemed even stronger. That guy Winterclaw has been lying low for quite some time. Anastasia's eyes narrowed. During the opening of the Tomb of the Ancient, he remained silent, as if trying to avoid the spotlight. Could it be that he is working with Mithranor to brew something big? As this thought crossed her mind, Anastasia's expression grew serious, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. It seems we will have to pull as many people as possible into our camp if we want to kill that guy. She muttered to herself as she recalled Evan's plan regarding the Phoenix clan that lived near the Frozen Monarchy. Sorting out her thoughts, she took a deep breath and continued flying forward at rapid speed. Suddenly, she felt something and glanced behind her, her mouth twitching slightly. This woman, she thought, shaking her head as she caught sight of a sneaky figure trailing her from far behind. The distance between them spanned thousands of kilometers, but under the effect of soul resonance, Anastasia could clearly see Illustria. Looks like this woman forgot that when it comes to stealth, there is no one better than me in all of Utopia. With that thought, Anastasia's speed increased dramatically, and she shot forward like a rocket. Illustria, upon seeing Anastasia streaking ahead like a comet, also increased her speed. However, she still maintained a considerable distance, afraid that Anastasia might notice her. The playful look on her face suggested that her main personality had gone offline, likely absorbed in reading the information Anastasia had given her about breaking her bottleneck. This meant that the one following Anastasia now was her secondary personality. Anastasia continued flying toward the teleportation formation, pretending not to notice Illustraia, while the elf woman sneakily followed her from behind. City after city of the Elventian Empire passed beneath them, and after a few hours, Anastasia was not far from reaching her destination. Then, without warning, she paused mid-air, as if she had discovered something, and swiftly descended, landing in the middle of a dense forest. Illustraia, who had been following her, also stopped at a distance and observed her curiously, wondering what she was doing. After landing, Anastasia dug a small hole in the ground and dropped something inside. Then, using her shadowy powers, she concealed it completely. Once finished, she wasted no time and resumed her journey. As soon as she left, Illustraia hurried over. Even with her powerful spiritual senses, she couldn't detect anything unusual on the spot. If she hadn't seen Anastasia hiding something there with her own eyes, she would never have known there was anything hidden. Afraid that she might lose track of Anastasia if she delayed too long, she quickly dug into the ground to see what had been buried. But the moment she uncovered it and saw what was there, her eyes widened in shock, and she instinctively tried to turn around. However, before she could react, a leg stretched out from her shadow and struck her round, plump buttocks with a swift kick. "You sneaky bye!" Illustraia couldn't even finish her curse before she was sent hurtling through the sky, vanishing into the distance like a shooting star. Anastasia emerged from the shadows with a sneer on her face, picked up the recording crystal she had placed in the pit, and flew back toward the teleportation formation. Soon, she arrived at her destination. With a subtle movement of her power, she perfectly concealed the formation's presence. Then, she glanced at the recording crystal in her hand and smiled slightly. "The next time we meet, I will be able to squeeze a few more benefits out of her." Satisfied with her plan, she activated the formation, disappearing from the Northern Territory and returning to the closed world of the Dryads. The moment Anastasia reappeared inside the teleportation building in the Dryads' world, she felt a subtle energy shift and turned her gaze in a specific direction. "He is already ready to break through to rank 4. She murmured in a surprised tone before immediately leaving the teleportation building. Chapter 1299 Space and Void Crystal Part 1. Evan lay on the cold, hard ground of the training room, his eyes still filled with confusion and a hint of horror. "What just happened?" he muttered in a low voice, recalling the female thug who had just violated his pure holy body. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerves, he remained still for about 5 minutes before finally sitting up. Opening his status window, he scanned the details, and the moment he did, his eyes flashed with joy, making him momentarily forget the horror he had felt earlier. Name: Evan Azroth. Race: Eltern. Current syncretization rate between your race, Eltern, and the origin universe, 78%. Rank: Peak of rank 3. Bloodline: Doombringer partially awakened, 3rd stage. Strength: 13,000 right pointing arrow 18,000. Agility: 9,000 right pointing arrow 15,000. Endurance: 25,000 right pointing arrow 30,000, plus 30,000 due to the effect of ruler's authority. World Essence: 20,000 right pointing arrow 26,000. Stamina: 10,000 right pointing arrow 16,000. Intelligence: 9,500 right pointing arrow 14,500, plus 1,450 due to false progenitor title. Primordial Shadow Energy: 9,500 right pointing arrow 17,000. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of void, 76.5%. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of soul, 0.8%. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of death, 0.6%. Bound Flame, Prismatic Fire. Soul Weapon, Halberd of Destruction. After reaching the peak of rank 3, all of his stat points had once again increased significantly. Not only that, but even his physical body, recently strengthened using the dragon blood flowers, had undergone further enhancement. Evan wasn't certain of his current limits, but he felt that even without using any of his skills, he might now be able to fully contend with a mid-level rank 4 core evolver. And if he used his Dragon Force skill, it wouldn't be impossible for him to face even a peak rank 4 core evolver. Suppressing his excitement, his gaze fell on his current understanding of the conceptual energy of the void. Now, to become a rank 4 core evolver, he only needed to increase it to 100% before he would be ready to create his Law Seal. Looking into his shadow storage, his eyes landed on the few void crystals he had left after using a few in the Azragoth world. Back then, due to the dire situation caused by the Eldritch army's attack, Evan had been forced to use some void crystals to rapidly increase his understanding of void energy in order to break through to rank 3. After that, he was left with the following: 1 low-level void crystal, 2 mid-level void crystals, 1 high-level void crystal. Each type of void crystal provided the following benefits. Low level, increases understanding of void energy by 1%. Mid-level, increases understanding of void energy by 3%. High level, increases understanding of void energy by 5%. In total, the 4 crystals he possessed could increase his understanding by 12%. Since his current understanding of void energy was at 76.5%, he needed an additional 23.5% to reach 100%. Clearly, the void crystals in his possession were far from enough. Evan did, however, have one more high-level void crystal, but he had placed it inside the evolution space of the Rune of Evolution while leaving the Tomb of the Ancient to evolve it. Currently, there are 2 items inside the evolution space of the Rune of Evolution. 1. Scarlet Blood Rose, which he found in the Tomb of the Ancient. 2. 1 high-level void crystal. Initially, he had placed the Scarlet Blood Rose inside the evolution space in hopes of increasing its grade and using it to fully awaken his bloodline. However, on Earth, he learned that this flower wouldn't be enough to awaken his bloodline. To awaken his bloodline, he would need to reach the top of the bloodline inheritance steps. With this realization, he now turned his attention to the remaining time before the items inside the Rune of Evolution would evolve. Evolution space, Rune of Evolution. Scarlet Blood Rose. Time remaining before evolution, 1 day 2 hours 3 minutes 45 seconds. High-level void crystal. Time remaining before evolution, 55 minutes 32 seconds. Under normal circumstances, both items would have required a few more months to fully evolve. However, when Evan had reached mid-level rank 3 in the Azragoth world, his Rune of Evolution had undergone an unexpected change. At first, he had been unable to determine what was happening, only sensing that a strange energy was brewing within the rune. Even after returning to Utopia, that unidentified energy did not disappear and was still growing continuously. Although he still couldn't fully comprehend the nature of this energy, its influence had drastically shortened the evolution time for the items inside the rune. Once the high-level void crystal evolved, it would transform into a perfect level space and void crystal. Evan wasn't sure exactly what changes this new crystal would bring, but he was hoping that it would increase his understanding by at least 10%. If that happened, he would only need to gain another 1.5% to reach the 100% mark. Although it wouldn't be as easy as using a void crystal, he could still achieve this using the power of his Rune of Absorption. He would simply need to alter the nature of the energy absorbed by the rune so that it mimicked the energy of void crystals, and it would be done. With that plan in mind, Evan silently waited for the void crystal to fully evolve. Time passed quickly. Now, only a few seconds remained before the void crystal's evolution was complete. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. As Evan finished counting, he received a notification confirming that the void crystal had successfully evolved into a perfect level space and void crystal. With a thought, he immediately willed it out of the evolution space without hesitation. A brilliant purple crystal, with a radiant silver core gleaming at its center, appeared in Evan's hand. The crystal was twice the size of his palm and gleamed like a massive diamond. As Evan focused on it, a new information window appeared before his eyes. Perfect Level Space and Void Crystal. Chapter 1300 Space and Void Crystal Part 2. Perfect Level Space and Void Crystal. A void crystal that mutated under the power of a strange evolutionary energy. Upon usage, it increases your understanding of the conceptual energy of void by 10% and the conceptual energy of space by 5%. Evan raised an eyebrow in surprise as he read the details of the space and void crystal. The 10% increase in understanding of the conceptual energy of void was within his expectations, so he wasn't particularly surprised by that. However, what truly caught him off guard was the additional 5% increase in his understanding of the conceptual energy of space. Items that can directly enhance one's comprehension of space energy, especially in the way void crystals does, are exceedingly rare. The void crystals Evan had obtained upon leaving the tomb of the ancient were formed over thousands of years within the void space of the tomb. Even then, out of all the crystals he had found, only 2 high-level void crystals had the capability to directly increase his understanding by 5%. Yet now, by merely placing a single high-level void crystal into the evolution space of the Rune of Evolution, he had obtained a crystal that could not only boost his comprehension of void energy by 10% but also space energy by 5%. Normally, Evan had no interest in studying space energy since he was already focusing on comprehending the conceptual energies of void, death, soul, and life. Besides, even if he managed to fully comprehend multiple conceptual energies, he could still only use one of them to create his law seal. And he had already chosen void energy as the foundation for his law seal. The reason he still aimed to comprehend death, soul, and life energy, despite already committing to void energy, was entirely due to the primordial shadow realm. The ultimate goal of creating a law seal is to wield the power of laws and merge that seal with one's illusionary world in order to evolve it into a chaotic world and break through to rank 5. In simpler terms, core evolvers create their own worlds using their law seals. Evan intended to use void energy to construct his world. However, Anastasia had told him that, unlike most individuals, who could only use one conceptual energy to forge their law seal and merge it with their illusionary world, he had a second option. That option was to take advantage of the primordial shadow realm during its integration process with his core and merge a second law seal into it. In a sense, the world created through void energy and the primordial shadow realm are 2 separate worlds. But once Evan successfully integrated the primordial shadow realm into his core, both worlds would merge into one. By utilizing this unique advantage, Anastasia had suggested that he forge a second law seal based on shadow energy, using the conceptual energies of death, life, and soul, and merge it with the primordial shadow realm during the integration process. Evan wasn't entirely sure if such a method would work, but he was determined to give it a try. This was why he was so eager to deepen his comprehension of death, life, and soul energy as quickly as possible. If he succeeded, his power would far surpass that of others at the same level. The task, however, was incredibly difficult since he would need to fully comprehend death, soul, and life energy before he could integrate the primordial shadow realm. But Evan wasn't too concerned about this. With the help of the Rune of Absorption, achieving this goal wasn't impossible. Returning to the topic at hand, even though the 5% increase in space energy comprehension wasn't particularly useful to him, and he had no plans to use it for a law seal, it was still a beneficial enhancement. Having even a basic grasp of space energy could prove advantageous when facing an opponent proficient in spatial manipulation. Seeing that the diamond-like crystal could boost his void energy comprehension by 10%, he didn't hesitate. He immediately sat down and activated the crystal's power. Since he had already consumed the other void crystals while waiting for the space and void crystal to evolve, this was the only one remaining. The moment Evan activated the crystal, its hard, diamond-like purple shell began to melt like wax. The liquefied energy seeped into his body, transforming into a vast current of energy that surged straight toward his core, then into his soul. Evan's mind buzzed as if someone had rung a massive bell beside his ears, and an influx of chaotic insights flooded into his consciousness. A slight frown appeared on his face as a mild headache crept in. However, he remained composed, steadily sorting through the messy information that filled his mind. Time ticked by, and the crystal in Evan's hand gradually shrank until it was half its original size. The outer purple shell of the crystal had completely vanished, leaving behind a smooth, silver-colored stone. Evan didn't stop there, and without hesitation, he absorbed the silver-colored stone as well. As soon as the final portion of the crystal melted into his body, a new surge of insights flooded his mind. Unlike before, these insights weren't related to void energy. Instead, they were entirely focused on space energy. The air around Evan began to tremble slightly, and dense spatial cracks formed around him. For half an hour, he continued to process and absorb the overwhelming information. Finally, after fully assimilating the crystal's power, he opened his eyes and checked his status window. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of void, 98.5%. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of space, 5%. Ignoring the increase in space energy comprehension for now, Evan retrieved the corpse of an eldritch horror and activated the energy devouring skill. His goal was to convert the eldritch energy within the body into void crystal energy in order to further enhance his understanding. Time passed as he repeated this process. After consuming the corpses of 2 peak rank 3